Hey, the sky's been torn open! The superhumans stopped running, frozen as they stared up at the sky in shock. The force that split the earth was one thing, but now the sky itself couldn't even stitch itself back together. The rift was so massive, it made everyone feel like they were standing at the boundary between two different worlds. On the ground, the god who had been slashed was split in half, blood pouring out in streams. The squelching sound of energy orbs squirming below could be heard. Just when everyone thought the battle was over, a strange rustling sound cut through the air. From the two halves of the god's body, a bunch of tentacles began to crawl out, some red, some black, without eyes or faces, but somehow still finding their way back together. Strangely enough, no one made a move to stop it, just letting him reconnect his body like some kind of skilled surgeon stitching himself up. His charred, monstrous form slowly raised its hideous head, wheezing in midair. Though he managed to reattach his body, the god looked exhausted, hunched over and panting, all traces of arrogance wiped clean. His mouth stayed shut, not daring to voice any of the thoughts running through his head. That attack! I didn't expect it to be this powerful. Even my body was split in two. He thought the last move had drained Shaoling's strength entirely, but he had no idea. Against Shaoling, he never stood a chance. A streak of golden light shot out, targeting his face just as he tried to lift his head. In that instant, Shaoling's skin ignited with blazing, molten fire. She'd given him time to recover, but had no intention of letting him off easy. Her burning gaze seemed to scream, "Stubborn bastard, you survived that. Then I won't hold back." He knew it too. If he underestimated Shaoling now, she would definitely kill him here. A swarm of eyeless snakes rose behind him. Knowing how terrifying Shaoling's power was, the god Birth and Nourishment stopped playing defense. He had to go on the offensive. The snakes opened their mouths in unison, blasting out dozens of beams of energy, packed tightly enough to completely overwhelm her. But Shaoling quickly channeled Flame Dragon Fist into a violently swirling vortex, shielding herself at the center. With its monstrous spinning speed, the attack-type skill instantly became a defensive wall, batting away all incoming energy blasts. Some exploded on contact, others were swallowed by the vortex and vanished, and a few were even dragged in, twisted around, and became part of the outer layer of her Flame Dragon Fist. The god Birth and Nourishment had never seen anything like this. His jaw dropped. Energy beams go straight. How the hell? Shaoling swung her arm forward and roared, "Here, take it back." The Flame Dragon Fist unfurled like a fan, hurling the purple energy beams straight back at him. If someone had missed the earlier moments, they would have thought Shaoling had launched the attack herself. Who would have guessed she absorbed the enemy's power and turned it into her own? The blasts pounded down on the god like a storm of hail, even faster and fiercer than before. It was like Shaoling's touch had unlocked their full potential. He stopped using the snakes and instead formed a glowing, purplish orb in his mouth. Meanwhile, after countering that barrage, Shaoling dashed forward, a flaming arrow in hand. She aimed to interrupt his technique, striking his throat with a flame slash so violently he let out a deranged scream. But she wasn't done. No way it was going to end that easily. She slashed him again from the opposite direction, the new wound crisscrossing the old, then again, and again. 3 more strikes, all to the face. Just to be thorough, she even struck at the energy egg cluster below him, fully intending to kill it before it hatches. The god Birth and Nourishment couldn't move. Those cursed energy eggs had latched onto him. His only move left was to hurriedly spawn a swarm of demon beasts with high attack power. They surged forward while he endured the assault. The creatures were grotesque and vicious, just like their master, and they had wings, making them even more dangerous. But Shaoling wasn't having it. From afar, she summoned her own pair of flaming wings. "Let's see what you've got now." Drag her down from the sky, the god bellowed, mouth dripping blood. His every word reached Shaoling's ears. "Think it's that easy to ground me?" A flicker of flame sparked in her hand. In a calm voice, she commanded, "Rise." A wall of fire erupted, blocking the winged beast's path. They stubbornly refused to back off or go around. Screaming in agony, they forced their way through the blaze. Their forms began to blur within the inferno. Realizing they couldn't get close, the god decided to sacrifice them all. he forced them to fly until their feathers turned to ash, trying to clear a path for himself to strike Shaoling. But what he didn't expect, Shaoling was thinking the exact opposite. She burned them down, and used that same path to launch herself straight at his face. By the time he realized it, it was already too late. Shaoling had transformed into a pillar of flame and pierced straight through the body of the god Birth and Nourishment, leaving behind a gaping hole as massive as a cave. She herself had already burst through and emerged on the other side. That hole was enormous. But considering he'd stitched himself back together earlier, maybe this wasn't the end yet. He coughed up a torrent of blood but still didn't die, even boasting, "That's not enough to kill me." No one needed to be told anymore. This guy should have been named Cockroach God, not Birth and Nourishment. Yet somehow, Shaoling still had the patience to deal with him. She leapt into the air with a twisting stream of flame dancing above her head. "I know," she said, and in a flash, the fire threads gathered and exploded into a massive fireball. Like something straight out of the Uchiha clan, the surrounding air violently expanded under the pressure of the heat, warping space and leaving the god Birth and Nourishment momentarily stunned. "Since when?" Shaoling smiled coldly, "Gladly letting you know. This is the purest elemental flame, the undying fire. It won't extinguish until it burns you to ash." It didn't look as flashy as the earlier sky-splitting move, but from her tone, it was clear this was her finishing blow. The god was furious. He thrashed and roared, instantly hatching all the energy eggs to unleash his horde of underlings. "I won't let you have your way, you wretched woman!" Under his command, the entire army surged forward. He went all in this time. Larger snake heads than before, in swarms like mushrooms after rain, opened their mouths and lunged. But Shaoling had no time to deal with them one by one. She hurled the giant flame orb downward. "Go to hell. Meet each other down there." Though small in size, she threw with terrifying strength. The fireball warped slightly from the force but reformed into a perfect sphere just before hitting the enemy. It looked like a miniature sun charged with immense energy. Even supernatural warriors kilometers away could see it clearly, beautiful and radiant. And wherever it landed, the ground melted like ice under heat. The snake heads were all dissolved completely in the scorching wave. The god Birth and Nourishment didn't have facial features, but his panic was evident as he watched his minions get wiped out like nothing. Only he remained, forced to face her alone. The fireball slammed into the earth with the weight of an iron boulder, sending tremors through the ground. As it slowly sank, it began corroding everything beneath it. The deeper it went, the more violent its destructive force became. The supernatural observers who weren't part of the battle simply stood aside, chatting calmly. This wasn't their fight. But the real destruction came when the fireball stabilized on the ground and detonated one final time with all its remaining energy. The shockwave blasted hundreds of meters outward, applying crushing pressure on anyone beneath it. The flames devoured every cell of Birth and Nourishment's body. He screamed and writhed in agony, thrashing wildly. Each time he tried to resist, Shaoling, still hovering above, would press down with everything she had, refusing to give him even the slimmest chance of escape. His hoarse screams were quickly drowned out by the roaring fire. His greatest weakness, immobility, became his death sentence. Suddenly, a claw shot out from the sea of flames, sharp talons reaching for Shaoling. But she didn't flinch, she simply stared at it, unmoving. Just as the claw got within a meter of her face, it suddenly froze, as if the energy fueling it had run dry. Then, with a soft breeze, it crumbled into ashes and scattered at her feet. Shaoling kept her gaze sharp, still wary, but she couldn't fake it anymore. The Inferno orb had truly lived up to her word. It burned until not a single living thing remained. Only when everything was consumed did the fireball finally vanish without a trace, leaving behind only smoke, steam, and the last drifting flecks of black ash. I. A few broken syllables could still be heard. And then, nothing. The god Birth and Nourishment was reduced to nothing more than a handful of dust. Not even a core remained. Everything that was once part of him, Shaoling had completely annihilated. Did we win? The supernatural warriors looked toward the battlefield, eyes filled with hope. There wasn't a single trace left. It was true. The god Birth and Nourishment had been completely destroyed. They had truly won, this battle had finally come to an end.